Folks, the Russiagate collusion hoax was one of the biggest political scandals of all time. And yet, in my view at least, it was just the tip of the iceberg of massive corruption, of deep state machinations that go on a regular basis. And we're still learning more. Of course, we've got a lot of new information coming out from the Director of National Intelligence. What we don't know is whether we're going to see real accountability for that. What else is left to uncover? Tulsi Gabbard says more documents will be forthcoming. We'll see. How high does it go? Donald Trump has said that Barack Obama was the ringleader of this. Is that true? Could it go even higher than that? Well, one of the interesting things here is that many of the same people and institutions who were so concerned about President Trump's alleged collusion with the Russians are the very same people who've been building up the mass murdering communist Chinese dictatorship for a period of decades. I'm Alex Newman, senior editor at the New American Magazine. Welcome to Behind the Deep State. Today we have a very special guest joining us to discuss all of this and more. He's one of America's most insightful journalists. His name is Lee Smith, and he has covered both of these topics in more depth than perhaps anyone. He is the author of a new book that's about to be released next month. It's called The China Matrix, the epic story of how Donald Trump shattered a deadly pact. And he's got a book that came out in 2019 that is more relevant today probably than even when it came out originally. It was a New York Times bestseller. It was called The Plot Against the President, the true story of how Congressman Devin Nunes uncovered the biggest political scandal in U.S. history. He's got another number of other books, including The Permanent Coup, how enemies, foreign and domestic, targeted the American president, and The Strong Horse, Power, Politics, and the Clash of Arab Civilizations. Like I said, he's a veteran journalist. He writes for Tablet Magazine, lives in South Carolina with his family. Lee, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Alex, thanks so much for inviting me on. I appreciate the very generous introduction as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to your 2019 book. I know at the time the establishment was still claiming that we were just being conspiracy theorists. There was no big attack against President Trump. Obviously, you have been entirely vindicated. Devin Nunes has been entirely vindicated. What are your thoughts about what we're learning so far about this Russia collusion hoax from the documents that Tulsi Gabbard has released?
Thanks. Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put it as vindicated. I mean, we knew exactly what was happening then. Devin Nunes was his lead investigator. We should keep in mind was current FBI Director Kash Patel, and so they found the documentation to show what was going on. So the documents that have been declassified the last couple of months now, and really I look at it as an administration-wide effort. So while the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, is doing a terrific job, there's lots of other people who are pitching in, including Kash Patel, including CIA Director John Ratcliffe. A lot of these documents are being hunted down by a lot of different people, and so they're doing a great job. I think, though, that we have a pretty basic understanding of what happened, and that's what the documents show, and the documents shed a little more light on that. What people want now, what I've been calling for since at least 2019, and what both Devin Nunes and, again, FBI Director Kash Patel have been calling for is accountability. And what accountability looks like, it's not just transparency. It's not just saying, yeah, look, James Comey and John Brennan, I told you they were bad guys. It's holding people accountable, and that's through indictments and hopefully convictions. So, again, I'm confident in the abilities of Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi to get the bad guys, to indict them and manage to convict them as well, and that's really what we want as Americans right now.
So, Lee, I want to focus on Kash Patel for a moment. We actually had him on the program for half an hour not too long before he became FBI director, and he knew all this, right? I mean, none of this is a surprise to him. But a lot of people in MAGA world are getting restless, shall we say. Where are the indictments? Why haven't we seen more? Do you think the FBI is quietly doing its thing, DOJ is doing its thing, or is there reason for concern?
No, I think that, look, I mean, Kash Patel has been working on this stuff since March or April of 2017, something like that, for quite a long time. So, he's keen, not just because he serves Donald Trump, who is the after the American public, Donald Trump was the prime victim of Russiagate. The cast doesn't want to just, he doesn't just want to, do right by the president. He's also for the for the American public and for Kash Patel. I mean, he's an investigator, a prosecutor himself, and this is what he wants to get done. So I'm sure he's working very hard. I'm sure he's got a terrific team over there. According to John Solomon and others, they're setting up grand juries around the country. There are real investigations. There are prosecutors who are involved. I hear word of these things myself. Look, something has to be said about what's going on in MAGA, unfortunately, and there's a lot of very disruptive actors who are doing bad things and who are actually trying to who are working to demoralize, frankly, Trump supporters. And some of the instruments they've been using, for instance, is the Jeffrey Epstein, stuff, and the point of this right at Donald Trump. And this is a distraction and a deflection from Russiagate. So I understand that when people on social media or elsewhere say, guys, enough with the documents, we want indictments. I agree. I'm there. But I'm saying the team that the president has assembled to get that done, there is no better team to get this done. Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, they will be leading the investigations, and we hope the prosecutions. These are the people we want in that place. So again, I understand the frustration. I'm with them, guys. Let's get moving. Let's put them in orange jumpsuits, right? Because that's the only way this narrative is ever going to change. As I've written before, if we don't have indictments and convictions for the next several generations in blue city public schools around the country, students, young Americans will be taught that the 45th, then the 47th president of the United States was a Russian spy. So for all sorts of reasons, we need to get that done. But I want to distinguish that again from bad actors inside MAGA world who are actively demoralizing Trump supporters. That's a very different thing.
Why do you think they're doing that? Are these well-intentioned people who are just
No,
impatient?
I don't think they're well-intentioned. I think they're very destructive. I think that, I mean, there may be a number of personal reasons. There may be financial reasons why they're doing this. There are no doubt political reasons, but they're clearly very destructive, and it's quite open what they're doing. You see them doing it on social media all the time. You see them, they're attacking Trump, and they're attacking Trump policies, including, and they're promoting different conspiracy theories. I mean, Donald Trump is very clear about this himself. When he posted on Truth Social, I've had it. These are my past supporters. And I'm very disappointed that Republicans are so weak. They join Democrats in doing these things. So again, there's perhaps a lot of different reasons, and a lot of people have different motives, perhaps, to be waging this campaign against Trump. But again, they are at the same time demoralizing Donald Trump supporters. Donald Trump was elected on a wave of not just dissatisfaction, right, with the way that things were going, and on a wave of disgust at what Joe Biden had done over the last 4 years, but also on a tremendous wave of optimism, quasi-religious. Remember, Donald Trump was shot in the head in Butler, Pennsylvania. And just the fact that he got up and was screaming, fight, 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 inspiring not just the people who were at the rally, but television viewers. People were really excited. It's like, Donald Trump is going to get things done. Donald Trump is serious. He's on a mission from God, right? So people are optimistic. And what I'm saying is, again, the investigations that we hear of, there's lots of reasons for people to be optimistic right now. So again, the fact that others are trying to demoralize Trump supporters is very, very bad.
Yeah. We've spent the last few weeks on this weekly program here. Last week we had Roger Stone on, who, of course, was one of the people thrown in jail amid all of this. The week before we had General Michael Flynn. Both of them echoed what President Trump said, that Obama was the ringleader of this, and both of them referred to this as treasonous. I'm curious to get your thoughts, Lee. You spent a lot of time studying this. First of all, do you think this is actually treason? And second of all, are these people on the run? Roger Stone told us that some of these people he knows for sure, like John Brennan, he said, had already fled the country. Are they that concerned? And does it go all the way up to Barack Obama?
Well, let me work backwards. In last October, I published a book called "Disappearing the President," and it's I mean, it's about Russiagate, but it's about the things that have followed. And what I do is I really sort of lay out. It's not just Russiagate; it's also some of the 2020 election procedures. It's the censorship campaign. It's the surveillance campaign. It was also the COVID lockdowns. And all throughout, I point and show here's Barack Obama, here's Barack Obama's leading role. And Barack Obama is never quiet about it. Remember, Barack Obama is the first president since Woodrow Wilson, that's 100 years, to stay in Washington, right? The reason he stayed in Washington was to direct this stuff. Did he do everything by hand? No, of course not. But the president, the commander in chief, gives a general shape to things. He sets it in motion, and that's what happens. And so that's what Barack Obama was doing. So I absolutely believe that that Barack Obama is responsible not just for Russiagate, but for a number of other different operations or campaigns that have hurt this country. Certainly since at least the Trump years, but we could talk about Barack Obama's separate career as well. And remember, the first person who truly identified this was none other than Donald Trump in a March, I believe it was March 4th, 2017 tweet. You may remember it, Alex, but Donald Trump said, just found out that Obama had my phones tapped at Trump Tower, bad guy. And there was a series of tweets. And you'll remember how the press dismissed this. They thought that Trump was a crank. He didn't know what he was talking about. But of course, we know how the president knew about it, right? Because the people who did have the Trump campaign under surveillance, they clearly left records of what they'd done. And so it's only logical that you to figure, well, wait, the FBI director, the CIA director, they're involved in an espionage operation targeting the rival campaign, the rival candidate. Yeah, this had to go. This had to go to the highest possible person because bureaucrats only operate with top cover. And in the case of Comey and Brennan, the only top was Barack Obama. So yes, I agree with both Roger Stone and General Flynn that Barack Obama is ultimately the ringleader of the anti-Trump plot that we started to see unfold starting in 2016. Look, there's other people involved. The Hillary Clinton campaign, they were the one who, paid for this, dossier of garbage, right? But remember,
To put it terribly.
this dossier was used by the FBI as evidence to spy on the Trump campaign. This is Barack Obama's FBI. Hillary Clinton did not control the FBI. The FBI spent a long time protecting the Clintons, but she didn't control the FBI. This is Barack Obama's FBI. So yeah, if you just look at what happened and draw the obvious conclusions of how Washington works, how a bureaucracy works, it's inevitable that we're going to lead, that's going to lead all the way up to Barack Obama. Will he be charged for this? That's a question that it's a very good question, but unfortunately, a question I don't have any good answers to that one right now.
Well, I guess time will tell. Do you think these guys are worried, Lee? I mean, one of the things Roger Stone said is that they still have allies and assets throughout the DOJ and the CIA. He even named a few names of some of the individuals who appear to be very content to work with the deep state.
Yeah.
But do you think the John Brennans and the James Comeys of the world are concerned about looming indictments?
I would imagine they're concerned. I mean, we see some evidence of that coming out in press reports, places like the New York Times. So yeah, I think they are concerned. They've been concerned for a while, but they've also managed to fend off the efforts of Trump's first administration. And of course, I think they believe they'll be able to, fend off Kash Patel and Pam Bondi in this instance as well. I don't think they are going to be able to. But yes, certainly they're concerned, and certainly they have. It's not just allies, right? It's not just allies that they have inside places like FBI headquarters and Langley. They also have institutional support, by which I mean these institutions do not want to see the institutions themselves tarnished, right? Because all of these guys with resumes, when they're leaving the FBI, they're leaving the CIA. They don't want to see their reputations and the reputation of the institution they're leaving hurt. So yeah, I imagine there's going to be lots of people at the CIA and the FBI, even under Director Patel's guidance and authority, who are going to be trying to screw these investigations up.
There's so much I want to chat with you about, and I do definitely want to get to China. But before we move on to China and your new book that's coming out in October, it's already available for pre-order, folks. I want to ask you about structural reforms, Lee. Do you think we need some changes in federal law to prevent something like this Russiagate collusion hoax from happening again?
I would say that one of the most important things is, well, I don't know if we need changes, actual changes in law. I mean, I think that people need to be held accountable for breaking the laws that we have on the books. And one of the big problems is we see all the time. Alex, you may have seen, I think it was last week, when the Trump administration deployed a whole bunch of federal law enforcement officers across Washington, D.C. And there was video of some drunken wise guy who was harassing federal officers, and they wound up throwing a sandwich at him. Well, what's the most recent report? That DC failed to charge him. So he's just going to get away with breaking the law. The enormous problem there is right now is that insofar as Washington D.C. is the nerve center of our federal bureaucracy, Washington, D.C. courts are not going to hold them accountable. First, because a lot of these people are themselves in D.C., because there are so many bureaucrats who sit on those juries, but also because the jury pool consists of the jury pool is made up of people who vote Democrat. I mean, it's something like 92%, I think, under Biden, 96 under Hillary. They voted 96% for Hillary Clinton 2016. For Biden, I think it was 92 in 2020. So that's a very big problem. And this is one of the things I believe that investigators and prosecutors are trying to get around now. They want to take these cases out of Washington, D.C., to be able to find juries that aren't entirely poisoned the way that Washington D.C. juries are. So, Alex, you have a deep state in your and the title of this great show, and this is a crucial deep state instrument. Just the jury pool of Washington D.C. And if you look at what that means, it means that if bureaucrats are doing something bad to punish Republicans, to hurt Republicans, they'll never pay a price for it. No matter if you catch them in the act, like catching a guy throwing a Subway sandwich at a federal officer, they're not going to charge him. Why? Because Trump deployed them, and everything Trump does is evil. He's a tyrant. He's a despot. So anyone who stands up to Donald Trump is a freedom fighter, right? That's the same thing that happened with the two guys that John Durham charged, Michael Sussman, Igor Danchenko. So this is a very big issue that the FBI and DOJ have to figure out some way to work around with this particular case. What does long-term reform look like? I think that's left to those suggestions are probably better left to legal minds. But certainly, you want to be able to find a way to move those different cases out of the Washington D.C. Away from that jury pool.
So I want to switch over to your upcoming book. I have not read it yet, but it's coming out in October. And it's about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. I've been talking about this for a long time. And in your book, you show how for basically 50 years, the establishment in America has been basically in an alliance with the CCP, for lack of a better term, transferring our technology, helping build up their economic might, which of course contributes to their military might. And in many cases, it's literally the same people and the same institutions that claim to be so concerned about Trump's alleged relationship with Vladimir Putin. What is going on here, and what do we do about it, Lee?
Donald Trump, I mean, really one of the important things is that Donald Trump is the first president who's done anything about it. Remember that Trump has been talking about the problems of the U.S.-China relationship since at least 2000. When he published his book, An America We Deserve. And, it's a very, very important issue for this president who has underscored the problems of the U.S.-China relationship. And as you say, it has been going back since the beginning. Donald Trump is the protagonist in my book, in the China Matrix. His antagonist is Henry Kissinger, who was sitting on top of the what I call the China class from 1971, a year before the trip, all the way up until his death in December, I believe it was December 2023. So he's the antagonist, and he stands for a large class of people who are heavily invested, not just financially, but also their reputations, their social networks. A lot of this stuff depends on that relationship, the U.S. relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, and it's deeply poisonous. And so, right, what the book does, it gives that history starting in 1972, all the way up to the present. And what we see is it's a bipartisan issue. It's not just Democrats. It's Republicans too. In fact, the problem starts with Republicans, with Nixon and Kissinger, right? Then the other big problems are George H.W. Bush, Bush 41, George W. Bush, Bush 43, and in particular, George W. Bush's Treasury Secretary, Henry Paulson, who after Kissinger is probably the most influential and the most destructive figure in the U.S.-China relationship. So it really gives a broad view and shows what Trump is doing, shows how Trump is fighting it. And you ask what we should do. A lot of people are focused on Taiwan, which makes sense. But the story of how China threatens the United States is not just about Taiwan. It's not just about the first island chain. This is why Trump is focused on the trade deficit, our trade deficit with China, because it's what China has done with those US dollars. We are the ones who have made the Chinese fabulously wealthy by letting them into the World Trade Organization. They wouldn't be able to advance their military the way they are, or advance their very dangerous tech the way they are, without that trade deficit that we run with them. So this is very important, what Donald Trump is trying to do. He's trying to take away a lot of the Chinese Communist Party's money. Another one of the issues is that Wall Street, and of course Henry Paulson comes from Wall Street, comes from Goldman Sachs. Chinese companies have been listing on Wall Street, and that's made them rich, right? They're taking American money to make themselves rich. And of course, we know from the various scandals in the mid-2000s that a lot of these companies were fake. They defrauded American investors. So for me, that's the real big issue. The money that American investors and of course American institutions have been giving the Chinese Communist Party to become a peer, nearly a peer power, nearly a peer to the United States.
And now with Larry Fink, not just in charge of BlackRock, but also the World Economic Forum, wonder where this will go. So we've had Peter Navarro on several times. And of course, the media has dismissed him as an economic ignoramus and a kook. But he really seems to have a well thought out plan here for trying to break this economic bond, at least, that you're talking about. Have you looked at his work, his writings, his strategy? What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. And, Robert Lighthizer also I interviewed for this book. And Lighthizer was the U.S. trade representative during Trump's first term. And, as Lighthizer explains, and Navarro is also behind tariffs. I mean, tariffs are a very important instrument. And it's very strange. It's very strange seeing how, how opposed people are to tariffs, how opposed so much of the American press is, and American thought leaders, and they seem not to understand that tariffs have been a vital tool protecting not just American trade, but our national security from the very beginning. Alexander Hamilton believed that tariffs were really, really important. And if you see all throughout American history, there have been people who have recognized the significance of tariffs. So yes, but Peter Navarro, Robert Lighthizer, and Donald Trump have all tried to explain to people why tariffs are important and why this is a key instrument in addressing that trade imbalance.
I know a lot of people are thinking about this. Is this going to lead to war? I mean, is the United States heading for an inevitable military confrontation with the CCP?
I don't think so. I mean, again, I think that's the only. If we focus on if we focus on Taiwan, as many people do, then yes, then it's leading to war. But look, a lot of this talk of war, you'll remember the different conversations during the first Bush term about, oh, we're headed towards war with China. It's like, look, I think a lot of it actually is kind of an information operation. A lot of people who have warned about war with China, the other part of that is warning war with China. No, we have to cool down tensions. And what that always means is, no, we have to appease the Chinese more because we don't want war with the Chinese. So we have to pacify them. How do we pacify them? Give them everything they want. No, it's time to stop giving them what they want. Right? Donald Trump, these negotiations are very, very important. Now, if you look what happened in the first term, these negotiations went on throughout his term. And I believe the same is going to happen here in the second term. And it's very, very important. And there's going to be a lot of insane rhetoric about how we're going to go to war. The Chinese are going to bomb this. The Chinese are going to take this. The Chinese are going to take that. It's very important for the Trump administration to bear down and win. Because if I believe that it's a core part of Trump's legacy, and he doesn't want to leave the United States in a situation where, again, it's where the Chinese Communist Party has its boot on the throat of America.
Is it too late? Did we give them too much money, too much technology? Can we still stop this?
Yeah, I think we can still stop it, but I mean, look, I'll not fault, but I would appreciate it if the president would come out and he would explain, look, what we might endure a little pain with these tariffs that are imposing, but here's why I'm doing it, because the Chinese People's Republic, the people who run the People's Republic of China are really bad, all up and down the board. There are no moderates. They're a bunch of creeps. Right. And we see that they've killed more than 80 million of their own people over the last, 80 years. They're worse than they've killed more people than Stalin and Hitler combined. They're really bad. And they have it out for Americans, too. These were the people who were behind COVID. They lied to us about COVID. They lied to us about all sorts of things. They're poisoning our crops. They're poisoning our fields. They're not nice people. These are not Europeans. Right? They're not the French. They're not the Germans. They're not the UK. So we're all gonna have to bear down a little bit. And believe me, I don't want anyone to feel pain, but we may feel pain. But believe me, when we come out of it, we're all going to be better off, and especially our children are going to be better off for this. So I think it'd be great if the president would come out and say something like that, explain to Americans that this may be a real struggle, but it's necessary, it's essential that we win.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Lee, the book is The China Matrix, the epic story of how Donald Trump shattered a deadly pact. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon. It'll be out in October. Lee Smith, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's all we have time for today on Behind the Deep Set. I want to thank you for tuning in. Get over to thenewamerican.com and go get a copy of those books, folks. This is critical information. Thanks for watching. God bless you all.